what do you see right now?
Just the quick start tab and meeting info. So if you have a quick start tab, you could also probably, there we go.
There we go. All right. So just to make that a little bit more fun, here's you guys rolling your eyes. But we're going to talk about some tips. So we'll take you from here to here. And I'm just going to break this down into 3 parts. And even if you already know what you want to say and how you want to say it, it's always a good idea to make sure that you answer the basic questions that we learned, back in 2nd grade, I guess. You know, the who, and this is the audience. You know, who are you trying to reach? This is very key, because if we don't have this, then we can't produce a good piece. Are you including all the facts that you want your readers to know about? Are you talking about a specific lake or county? Do you want folks to go to a certain place for a meeting? You can always make this part personal, say in your backyard or neighborhood, so you have to think about that. Is this a directive? Do you want your reader to act now? So that's a time. Or is it you want folks to come to a meeting, and then obviously you want to tell them what time to be there. This is the purpose. Why should the reader make a behavior change or attend a meeting? This answers the question, what's in it for me, or why should I care? And how do you want them to behave now that they have read your information? You want to make sure to ask your reader to do something, because information is just not enough. We want them to do something with that information. So these are the most important questions to answer, these 3 here, if you want to have some solid impact. When we think about content, we want to focus on both readability and legibility. So if the piece you designed has a message that's easy to understand, then you have high readability. How do you know you're writing to your audience? Well, actually Microsoft Word has a built-in tool to measure your content. So if you have all your content written up in Word, you can use the Flesh Reading Ease test. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but this is the simple instructions, and this will be recorded, as Tim said, so we can go back and look at this. But these are the simple instructions. You can also Google it to get your Flesh Reading Ease score. And this is, typically you want to shoot for around 60 to 70, unless you have a specific audience in one of these other ranges here. These numbers and categories that I put together here are actually from the Water Words That Work website, which is a great resource for creating readable content. They have a lot of great stuff on there. I made this little image, but they have all this information on their site. You also want your readers to be able to decipher the letters and images in your brochure or web page or whatever you're designing. You don't want your font to get in the way of your message. So you want to use it to your advantage. There's 3 different types of font. I just said types of font. That's no pun intended. There's serif, which has the little edges on each letter, and then the sans serif, which means without serif, which I've used in a lot of this presentation. And then there's some decorative fonts that can give you style and personality and maybe a theme. So I use this freestyle script just for fun in this one. So here's a comparison of a good and a not so good. Sorry, it's a little blurry. I had to blow it up here. a good and not so good way to use different fonts. So you can see that they kind of use the fancier font for the headings, and then, you know, for the subheadings and your main text using a basic font. Here, you're getting a little crazy with all kinds of different fonts, and it ends up drawing the reader's attention away from what you want to tell them. They're just confused. So we could spend all day talking about typography, and you know, there's design students that spend semesters on this kind of stuff, but I'm guessing that you probably want to move on. But I want to kind of stop and see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, if you have any questions, you could either use the chat box, which should be on the right of your screen, or otherwise you can unmute yourself and ask yourself if you have questions.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to go, I'm going to move on. And if you do have questions throughout, go ahead and unmute yourself and interrupt me. That's totally fine. When it comes to images, we want to make sure to choose those that will connect with our audience. So a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? I had to put this in here. This is my daughter enjoying water. So I'm going to share the advice from the Water Words That Work website because it just makes sense. They talk about 3 categories of photos that are foolproof. So under faces, you know, basically Water Words That Work is saying, hey, we're drawn to a visual pattern resembling a face. It doesn't have to be a person. So here is a picture of an eagle. I don't think it's a bald eagle, but you can't really see it. Now here, you can see the face a little bit better, so this is a little bit better. But when you get something like this, that's something that would really grab your attention. In this example, if we're talking about monitoring, you know, there's some people here doing something on the edge of a lake, but we're not really sure what they're doing. But this, it's clear that he's doing something with water. He's either testing it or monitoring something, so this would be a better image. You can also show the behavior that you want people to take on. So here, this picture is showing putting in a rain barrel, using a rain barrel. This one is showing taking the plants off your trailer and off your boat. And then the third thing is pretty self-explanatory, before and after pictures. And this is a very grainy picture, but this is one that I found that was really, you can really tell the difference between one and the other. So this is the kind of stuff that would work really great on a website. I think the before and after works much better on a website, but it can work on a printed brochure or flyer as well. So those are the kinds of pictures you should look for, but where? The DNR has a really great Flickr site that they're constantly updating, and all of those photos are in what's called the Creative Commons. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Creative Commons, but basically it's folks that share their pictures and you can utilize them. Some people have stipulations like you can't alter their pictures. Some people don't mind. Some people say you can use it as long as you give them credit, which that's my next point. You always give credit. That's something that I've heard a lot where, oh, I'm just grabbing something to put on a presentation that I'm only going to use once and it's for educational purposes. You still need to give credit. And you should really get written permission for anyone that is under the age of 18, so you need to get written permission from their parent or guardian. There are some exceptions if you're in a public place, like on a beach and there are a lot of people there, and you're just kind of taking a picture of the group being at the beach, that's fine. Or if you have the back of someone, the back of a child is fine too. Okay, so now you have your content and images. You know, let's talk design. Okay, so there's a reason for this photo, more than just to make you laugh, because I think it's funny. But we can actually use the acronym CRAP to help us remember the 4 elements of design. They're contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. See? Crap. So whenever you have to do something that you have to design, you know, don't be too upset. Just think crap and then move on. So contrast helps us to create focus on what's important. I figured the best way to explain contrast is to show you. So, you know, I'll show you some different colors, shades, shadows, white space, that kind of stuff. So here's some good contrast versus bad contrast. The reason this is so rough on the eye is because the blue and green are too close in the spectrum, and then the red and green are just too much of a contrast that they're, you know, they hurt each other. So if you look over here, this is still contrasting, but it definitely works. You can read it, it's readable. That's the important part. So here's the same design using shades of black, and you can see this still is really difficult to read because the shadows are so dark. They're too much dark on dark. You have to go really dark with really light. And I think when most of us see things, we know whether we like it or not. We're just not sure how to fix it if we don't like it. So hopefully this will give you some ideas. Now, colors don't just provide contrast, but they can also set a tone or a mood. I found this great infographic on bufferapp.com, and it's pretty cool. A lot of these logos we've seen, we probably know almost all of them. And it's kind of cool to see how they line up with the colors and these moods. And then, of course, there's a few out here that have many colors, which is to create that feeling of diversity. So here's another flyer that looks great. Actually, there's a lot of good design that goes into this one, and we'll use it as a resource later on to explain alignment and proximity. But if you just change the contrast a little and make those black pieces red, it really changes things. It really makes things pop out. So we also can use white space as contrast. So white space is super, super important, and I know that a lot of people in the scientific field like to cram as much information as they possibly can into everything that they do. So, which is understandable. They don't want anybody to miss anything. But I think the more you cram in, the less you get out of it sometimes, depending on what you're creating. So it's great if you can get them to go somewhere else for more information. So here's an example of white space on the right. You can tell that these two pieces were created for different audiences. The one on the right creates a calm and luxurious mood, so because of all this white space. And it's the same exact photo, it's the same exact words. white space can also be passive and active. So here's an example of some text that really could use some white space. So here's some passive white space, the same information that you just saw. So, you know, this is the exact same as this. And it's got some passive white space in it to just move things down the page and make it easier to read. Now, if we wanted to make it active white space, we can separate this bolded quote with a little bit extra space. And this, basically what active white space does is it leads your reader from one element to another in your design. And you can see by this, it's not just in images, it's also in text. So repetition gives a designed piece that professional consistency. Everything is connected. So you can do this with fonts, colors and patterns, or graphics style. Here are a couple examples. This repetition includes a numbered list. It also has the blue circles and the white rectangles. So all that is repeating. Over here, the image of the sandwich is repeating in different squares. The squares are repeating. And then you also have these little red images coming out of this word that is repetition as well. So the flyer we showed earlier that used this contrast also uses repetition with color, and then font, because we're looking at similar font, images with these arrows and the lines, and bullets, obviously. So this one, like I said, we'll be looking at this piece again for other parts. On to alignment. Alignment's also used to connect the pieces into a whole. So it's all about finding the invisible line. If we go back to these same designs that we just looked at, alignment here, all the numbers are aligned, all of these boxes are aligned. Same thing, the font and the pictures are aligned this way, and all of these bullets are aligned as well. Same thing here. These lines help to align everything. Everything that is underneath these headings is aligned. Okay, when you look at this image, this one's got some issues with alignment. So here you see the top is kind of on a slant, and then you've got a couple of fonts that are really close together. This is in the design world called a kiss. There's three of them in this piece. One right here, there's one right here where the logo is right on the edge of this brown area, and there's one right here. And so you want to make sure you either overlap on purpose or you make sure that it's not close enough where it's touching. So to help with alignment, you can use a grid system. Now, you don't have to have something that's drawn in. You can if it's helpful, but you can eyeball it. If you are tilting something, you can always tilt everything to the same degree. But if you look here where the kisses were, they have fixed all those. So this is far enough away. This is an intentional overlap here, and these are on the same plane and spaced out nicely. These are also, if you look back, they were all kind of haphazard. Now they're in line with each other, and this is on the same diagonal as the rest of this piece. So then it ends up looking like a much better piece. So that brings us to proximity. You can use proximity to guide your reader easily through your piece. by grouping similar elements, you know, that complement each other. So you can use relationships, you can use proximity to help flow through a piece, and then I'll talk a little bit about the rule of thirds. So in the image on the left, even though it looks a little strange, things are grouped. So this doesn't mean anything to us because it's Latin, but they're aligned nicely, and these two things are grouped together with this color box. These three things are grouped together, and they're also aligned on a diagonal. That's the same as the leaf. Over here on the right, I mean, it doesn't look terrible. You can read it, but there's no flow. There's no flow, and the proximity, you know, lends that flow. Talking about flow, here are the arrows that tell you, okay, you made it to the check mark, you're done. So it guides you from one step to the next. Now, the rule of thirds is based on the more complicated golden ratio, which we're not going to go into in depth. It describes the perfectly symmetrical relationship between two proportions. And, you know, according to Johannes Kepler, it's a precious jewel. Here are some examples of the golden ratio in nature. It's very, very similar to the Fibonacci series, if you've heard of that. Pretty cool. So we basically, in design, are trying to replicate some amazing things that we have in nature. So if you apply the rule of thirds to your designs, you'll have 4 focal points to work with. Basically, this is one of the reasons that a trifold brochure works. So according to Design Modo, 41% of the users focus here, first and the longest. So if you have something really important to say, or if you have a great picture, that's where you want to put it. So here's an example of using the power of thirds in advertising. So they really want you to know that there is discount madness. So we just plowed through a ton of information in a really brief amount of time. I think I probably talked too fast, but I have some resources here that might be helpful. This non-designer's design book really goes into depth with those 4 design principles: the contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. I talked about the water words that work. They have a ton of stuff on their website. It's great to go through. I use Purdue OWL often when I'm writing, so it's a helpful tool when if you're writing or editing. There's some other things here about color palettes, fonts, font combinations, which is kind of cool. Kind of tells you if you want to use just 2 or 3 fonts, these are the ones to put together. Then you don't have to think about it. The DNR Flickr site, of course, and then there's also templates. So you don't have to create stuff over and over and over. You don't have to recreate the wheel, basically. You can take something that's already set up for you and just put in your information. Everybody else still there?
I'm at least still here. So to kind of add on what Amy had to say as far as resources go, we can try to compile some more of these too. Like, for example, in addition to the DNR Flickr, I know there's a Wisconsin Sea Grant Flickr page that has Creative Commons resources, and then on the Wisconsin AIS Partnership Box account, there's a whole bunch of pictures, mostly from Paul Kowalski that he's been kind enough to let us all use, and I know there's species pictures, but then there's also other fieldwork pictures there too that Crystal's put together before she left. So there's a lot of options there too for people needing photos. Yep. And I assume Amy would extend this as well, but I'm more than happy to look over things and provide some feedback. Not that I'm a designer, but I know another set of eyes always helps, and I'm always happy to help do that for people that need some help designing things.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the process too. I always do that, whether I take something that I've created and run it past folks that I'm working with, or maybe I'll just go into a different part of the building and just talk to students, or take it home and try to talk to people that know nothing about what I'm putting together. It's good to, I don't ever have the funding to do like a double-blind study or anything, but it's really good to get feedback, and I always find that I end up with a better product. I always end up with a better product when I ask for and consider feedback from people.
So are there any questions, or like Carol Warden, I think I heard you say that you're still there, since you're still there. Do you have any questions, or does anyone have any products that they're currently working on that they'd like to share and maybe get some feedback on?
I don't have any questions. Our presenter was amazing.
Thank you, Carol.
Amy, I do have a question. That Purdue OWL, is that literature, or what's that for? Editing?
Yeah, the OWL is an online writing lab. So
okay.
It's great because you can just put in your question, basically. You put in some keywords, and you usually can find what you're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, Amy, can you go back to it's one of the slides on the principle of thirds?
Yes.
And right there, the question right here on the percent focus.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more in depth about where attention is drawn to brochures? It sounds like you said somewhere on the front cover, but is there anywhere else we could focus efforts? And I guess could you maybe re-explain this?
Sure. Picture this as if you opened up, obviously the front cover of a brochure, you're going to want to have, one of those foolproof photos. But if you open up a brochure, think of this as the full brochure opened up. This is a really great way to utilize that full space. I mean, I've seen brochures that work great that have 3 separate columns, but if you can blend this whole design, this is where people are gonna, this is where people's eye goes first. And it also, basically it flows through this way. And that might have something to do with the fact that we read left to right, we read top to bottom, so we're probably trained to see things that way. But we should use it to our advantage when we're designing. And this is also, I mean, this works for a lot of different things. It works for a flyer or maybe an event card that you send out in the mail, a website. It definitely works for a website. I don't know, do you want me to, I'm not sure what else to.
I think that might do it for now. If we need more clarification, we'll see if anything comes up in the chat.
Okay. One of the things that I didn't put in this because I thought it would get too long, but I must have talked really fast, is that if you're doing a website especially, but it does work in print materials too, testimonials are huge. If you think about the fact that, we're in the social media age, we use testimonials probably almost every day. If we're ordering something online, we typically won't order it unless we read some of the testimonials first. We want to know, if I'm buying a pair of shoes, I want to know, do they run big, or, you know, what's the scoop with them? We really depend on other people's feedback. And I was reading on rocketspark.com that if you're talking about video testimonials, they found that written testimonials increased their customer conversion by 25%, and when they used video testimonials with the same information and the same testimonial, it increased by 201%. So if you're doing websites, it's probably worth getting some video testimonials. And you know, this is more based on business, but there's no reason that we can't use it in the environmental field to help change behavior.
I got a question about the this rule of thirds graphic.
Mm-hmm.
Can you skew those percentages with images? Like maybe you have something that the color pops more in one of those lower corners.
Oh, absolutely.
But does that make it feel thrown off?
I don't think so. Let's just look at an example here. Well, he's actually in that that first third. I'm just going to try and find something that's not that way. Like, for instance, this is not even, you know, this picture of the person's face is not really in thirds. Kind of is, top to bottom. Her eyes are in the bottom third. But, you know, I think it depends on your audience, too. So it depends on what you want to convey. And sometimes I think the rule of thirds can allow you to train the reader to go a certain way, but you can also use those other 4 design principles to do that as well. So you can use contrast to move your reader through your piece, or you can use, I mean, you want to use all 4 of those. You want to use alignment, you want to use contrast, you want to use, you know, proximity, because you want to group those things together, and that helps it flow too. You want to use all 4 of those. You want that repetition, but you don't. You can kind of move towards one to actually make it flow. So you don't have to use all 4 pieces to make it flow. Like the one piece, this piece does a really good job of using everything, but it's very linear, and it's very, I mean, it's fine for a team planning meeting, but, you know, if you wanted to convey a different message, you know, maybe use a large picture. Because, yes, I think that you can, that those percentages, you know, yeah, I think they can be skewed with the different design principles.
Could I just add 2 cents there?
Yes.
I would say those percentages matter less if you're dealing with an image than if you're dealing with words. Like if you have a picture using the rule of thirds, you can pretty much make the viewer's eye go to whichever one of those corners you want it to. But I think so it probably matters, like those percentages are skewed more easily with an image than just with words.
Absolutely. And the rule of thirds is something that photographers like you, Carol, would know a lot about. You know, it's something that you like to have in your image to make the composition, you know, really pop.
Yep, it's definitely one of the first principles.
Yep.
So this is something else from the chat box, but just more of a comment. One of the attendees just said that they use design seeds to find a color palette for some of their reports, and they just found it pretty helpful and a good selection of things. So we'll be sure to, well, I guess it'll be in the recording, but we could also send that out as a link to.
Excellent. I came across a nice color palette thing too, but that just gives you, you know, if you just want a real quick, I'm doing something for print and I want 3 colors, boom, then you have it, you know. I think that one is, I'm making you all dizzy now. That's the colorlovers.com.
Obviously a UK website.
Yes. Because they spell color right.
So any other questions or comments quickly? Well, if not, you guys know where to reach Amy at UW Extension Lakes, and you guys obviously know where to reach me. But then there's also, I think, a bunch of people on the webinar that probably have an interest in design and photography, and they would be more than helpful to help you out if you have any questions or need some help or just want to bounce ideas off of people. So thanks, Amy, for joining us and sharing all your lovely information with us. It was very enjoyable. I loved all the cute animals. It made my day.
That was part of my repetition.
So for the third webinar, Casey Stuchik is working on putting something together for us. We're still open to ideas if anyone has anything they'd like to hear about, although right now we're looking at maybe doing something regarding branding, what branding is, why brands work, what brands consist of, because we obviously work with a lot of different brands and campaigns here in the AIS program, like Habit Attitude, Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers. So maybe a little background information on, you know, kind of what makes those tick could be interesting. So if you hate that idea, be sure to let me know, or if you have anything else that you think might be useful. But otherwise, thanks. Like I said, this is being recorded, so as soon as this WebEx does its thing, I'll try to clip it, make the video, and get it on YouTube as soon as I can, send it out. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tim.